Welcome to Listen to Me, a multi-voiced exploration of the city with 21 guests sharing their personal experiences of Milan's contemporary art, architecture, design, music, fashion and literature. We explore each theme in 4 episodes.
Quando entro nella Scala è sempre...
Whenever I enter La Scala, I feel strong emotions every single time. This is probably linked to my childhood because from my grandfather to my father, everyone at home was a huge opera fan. One of the recurring phrases I used to hear as a child was, "You need to go there prepared because you must never cough at La Scala, ever." For me, this prohibition to go there and never cough not only became a mission, it's also now the reason I make a scene whenever anyone near me at the Opera House coughs. If you can't control yourself, leave. That's what the Scala is all about. You have this container, a container of sound, of history, of scenography. Who could ever forget Strehla and Muti's production of The Marriage of Figaro? You see, there are monumental moments connected to that container.
Che sono connesse a quel contenitore.
That was Alberto Rollo, writer, essayist and music enthusiast. Whether you're from Milan or a visitor, he's the ideal person to ask for advice if you're visiting La Scala for the first time.
Possibilmente...
Go and see a performance if you can, but make sure you get there early. That way you can watch people arrive and maybe have a wander around the corridors so you can see how it's changed its face over time. After all, you can't have a theatre without the people who go there. The public must be ennobled by the performance. If this doesn't happen, it's not theatre, it's not music. So we need to go and see, even just to feel the texture of the velvet fabrics, that sort of thing. But more than anything, it's worth it for the overall spectacle. I'd highly recommend it.
Insieme, questo suggerisco.
We also asked Enrico Ruggeri, a prominent Milanese singer-songwriter, why he believes the Scala Theatre is so important for Milan.
La Scala is a big part of Milan's great history. They say, and it's true, that the section of Via Manzoni Road outside La Scala used to be covered in hay, so Giuseppe Verdi wouldn't be disturbed by the sound of the horses' hooves during his last days. This is one of the first things that immediately comes to my mind when I look at La Scala and I think about the respect there was for music and great composers like Verdi. La Scala is also Toscanini. La Scala is the crossroads between Italian and foreign culture. Von Karajan, Rostropovich, and Lorin Maazel came here. Basically, the greatest musicians of the 1900s passed through here. So Milan really let down a drawbridge to the world.
Nei confronti del mondo.
A visit to La Scala is an obligatory rite of passage for many Milanese children, as it's been for Carla Sozzani, the founder of Corso Como 10.
Ho ritrovato recentemente.
I recently found a photo of me and my father at La Scala in 1967, and I was also there when they were throwing eggs and tomatoes at the people who entered. That opening night in 68, what was it? Don Giovanni? I can't recall right now. I'll have to have a look. I found some photos recently. I have memories of it when I was young because my parents liked to go there. For me, going to La Scala with my father, he would replace Mom with me because there were 2 seats, so it was either 2 of us or no one, made me feel like a real lady. If people mistook me for his wife, I was delighted. I studied Russian because I often went to La Scala, and there was the Bolshoi, and I wanted to understand it. I was studying at the Bocconi University at the time, so I signed up for Russian. I learned the Cyrillic alphabet and studied Russian for 4 years. For me, La Scala was a reference point. I had a friend who had a box, and she even used to invite us to parties there. We saw some wonderful operas. So yes, it was also thanks to La Scala that I learned Russian.
Sì, sicuramente ho imparato anche russo.
Carla Sozzani's personal recollections also tie in with the story of the city. In fact, La Scala has always been the centre of everything. Burnt to the ground with its interior bared to the sky, it became a symbol of the wounds of the Second World War. For the people, it became a symbol of rebirth, and it was the first monument in Milan to be restored and reopened with an unforgettable concert by Toscanini. The episode with the eggs and tomatoes that Carla Sozzani mentioned happened on the 7th of December 1968, when a group of young protesters attacked the elegant ladies who were going to an opening night at La Scala, which is traditionally held on the Feast of St. Ambrose, the patron saint of Milan. This event marked the start of the protests of 1968, which changed Italian society forever, paving the way not only for civil rights, but also for a dark season of terrorism.
La storia della città, secondo me.
I really think you can feel the history of the city. Maybe that's because I lived it in person. I don't know. It could just be me who feels it so strongly. However, I think that when any person from Milan enters La Scala's foyer or goes upstairs to the bar during the interval, then there are the operas of Wagner, honestly a bit too heavy for me. And I have a wonderful memory of going there with my sister, her final year for her birthday. Yes, that was lovely.
Quindi bello.
The Scala Opera House is just a few minutes' walk from the stop Duomo on the red Metro line M1 or the yellow line M3.
La Scala is not merely one of the most famous opera houses in the world. It's also at the centre of a labyrinth of places and splendour. So much so, it almost contends with Duomo for the title of the authentic heart of Milan. It's fascinating to study the list of the ancient owners of the boxes at La Scala, which were recently published on the theatre's website. In fact, at the time, it was common for the powerful families of the city to have their own private box, where they could not only watch the opera, but also forge business, friendships, and love affairs. And among these owners, the big names of the Milanese nobility and bourgeoisie of the 1800s, we also find the Bagatti Valsecchi brothers. Today, their mansion, which lies just a few minutes' walk from the Opera House, is now one of the most striking museums in Milan, a soulful place, as we'll hear in the words of Alessia Garibaldi.
It's a place to visit, but it also has this really intimate and introspective side to it, with its slightly dark colour palette. This naturally leads you to appreciate the objects inside. There's a relationship between all of the various elements. Many people might consider it a bit excessive, but in my opinion, despite its age, it conveys this dialogue between the objects really well. It's a story of the lives of its owners, also expressed through the collection. Even today, the halls give you the impression of a library, how this library was used. Take the bathroom, for example. You also get this sense of modernity in the way the waters have been thought out. You see these rooms that hold these great collections, these huge altarpieces, but you can also still see the bed. So it's interesting, this dual aspect. We see a tiny piece of the life that was in the house, and then we also see a collection that has survived and is lived even today, right? This is a really interesting aspect for me. The fact it continues to be used for the purpose it was conceived for, even today. So this aspect, this element, is really contemporary. What I mean is, it's really beautiful when things are pondered, isn't it? Because in some ways, they remain with us forever. They can also be given a new lease of life, especially if you respect how they were originally conceived.
The Bagatti Valsecchi brothers were also passionate theatre-goers. The numerous photographs in the museum's cabinets bear witness to the many private shows they organised for their family and guests. Among the many objects in the rooms of Bagatti Valsecchi House is a very curious object, an inlaid piece of furniture with a piano hidden inside. But why is it hidden away? Because during the Renaissance, the era that inspired the Bagatti Valsecchi brothers, the piano did not exist. but because they still wanted to play it, they decided to conceal it inside a piece of Renaissance-style furniture. It's just one of the many surprises you'll find in this rich and fascinating museum. Inevitably, the ancient piano has attracted the attention of many passing musicians. Apparently, even Elton John got an overwhelming desire to play it, much to the annoyance of a museum guard. Enrico Ruggeri explains to us why ancient instruments can be so fascinating.
Piano, or any musical instruments, particularly the piano in general, makes you think about all the people who came here to play it. You can certainly imagine that these two brothers invited a few famous pianists to dinner and that they would have listened to beautiful music. So I think the fascination for antique pianos is that you can almost envisage, you can get a feel for the people who played them.
The Bagatti Valsecchi Museum is bringing music back to the halls of this mansion, so visitors can relive the evenings the brothers spent here. In fact, concerts are often held in the main hall, and prestigious Milanese music institutions, famous singers and young emerging artists are invited to perform both ancient and modern pieces, filling these halls with melodies once more.
Milan is living proof that the arts intertwine, and the fact that the museum has opened its doors to music is also a sign of open-mindedness. A sign that even today, despite streaming, despite Spotify, despite everything that's happening to music, there's still a meeting of minds, values, and common ground. A love for beauty, a love that does not want to turn music into a marketplace.
The Bagatti Valsecchi Museum is just a few minutes' walk from the stop Monte Napoleone on the yellow metro line M3.
The district is also home to the Poldi Pezzoli Museum. Created by collector Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli in the 1800s, it's a very intimate and welcoming museum, as confirmed by architect Alessia Garibaldi when comparing the two museums.
I find the Poldi Pezzoli Museum a bit more feminine. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of the sculptures there. The rosier colour tones. It has a completely different charm. And it's also very elegant. I don't know why. Maybe in some way it's because Bagatti Valsecchi was conceived by two men, even though Carolina Borromeo did live there. Whereas in some ways, Poldi Pezzoli gives me more the impression, the stairs, the shapes, the more subtle, brighter colours. It does give me the impression of a museum, but it has a more feminine spirit, if that's possible. If it's even possible to feel the spirit of a place.
Sentire un po' lo spirito dei luoghi.
Among the sculptures that Alessia Garibaldi mentioned is the delicate and fascinating Fiducia in Dio, Faith in God, an incredibly beautiful marble nude of a young woman, commissioned by Rosina Trivulzio, the mother of the museum's founder, Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli. As was common in the 1800s, Rosina Trivulzio was educated in both music and painting, as can be seen in her beautiful portrait with a harp in the background. Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli had very close ties with La Scala. In fact, just like the Bagatti Valsecchi brothers, he owned a private box there. After seeing the lavish set designs of the operas at La Scala, Giacomo Poldi Pezzoli was so in love with that style that he commissioned the design of his armoury display to a set designer at La Scala. The result was a neo-Gothic space, full of banners, weapons, armours and trophies, which looks as if it has been taken from a novel by Walter Scott. Just like a theatre set, the arches and decorations have been made in wood, stucco and papier-mâché. Sadly, photographs are the only thing that remain of that phantasmagorical display, which was completely destroyed by the bombings of the Second World War. The armoury that we see at the museum today is the result of an intervention by the famous sculptor Arnaldo Pomodoro in 2000. The common thread that connects Poldi Pezzoli to music is as strong as ever, with its regular programme of conferences, concerts and dance performances. This is the end of this episode, but please don't take your headphones off just yet, because in the next episode we'll be taking you to the Milan Conservatory, where the music talents of the future are born. To listen to the next episodes, follow us on your favourite podcast platforms or visit www.casamuseo.it, where you can also buy the Casa Museo card to visit the Poldi Pezzoli Museum, the Bagatti Valsecchi Museum and Villa Necchi Campiglio at a discount price. The Boschi di Stefano House Museum is free to visit.